And given that information and given how we're processing it and what we're capable of, we're going to make whatever choice we do. Now, that may be the best choice in the world, but because of things outside our control, the outcome itself of that decision may be horrible. Or it may be a ridiculous decision. I mean, truly the wrong one. If we're
Right.
talking in terms of probability, there was a 0.5% possibility that anything good would happen. But in the world of probability, a 0.5% still is a 0.5%, and it does happen sometimes, and you just happened into it. So it was a horrible decision, but the outcome worked out. So we can't judge the quality of our decision based on the outcome.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stephenson, the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where our goal is to help you live your best audacious life ever. It's always a pleasure to be here with you, and I want to take a moment to express my gratitude for choosing to spend time out of your day with us. Together, we'll explore the intricacies of life, uncover powerful insights, and share stories that inspire you to embrace boldness, resilience, and the beauty of transformation. Now, consider life as a river winding its way through a diverse landscape. At times, the waters may flow smoothly, while other moments bring unexpected rapids, twists, and turns. Just like the river must adapt to the changing terrain, we too must navigate the inevitability of change. When faced with obstacles, we can either resist the current or learn to ride the waves, adjusting our course as necessary. Embracing change allows us to discover the new paths and opportunities, ultimately leading to personal growth and fulfillment. Throughout this episode, we'll delve into the importance of resilience and how facing challenges can serve as a catalyst for growth. We'll also explore the concept of pressure as a mental construct that can either hinder our performance and how reframing our mindset can lead to greater success. Our guest today brings valuable insights from the world of stunts, where the lessons learned are not just about courage and physical prowess, but also seizing opportunities and maintaining flexibility in the face of unpredictability. I'm thrilled to welcome Brian Hite to the podcast. Brian is a seasoned stuntman with over 30 years of experience in the industry, and he's a keynote speaker and a performance psychology expert. He holds a PhD in organizational development and has worked extensively with the military, helping soldiers enhance their performance under pressure. Brian's unique blend of expertise in stunts and psychology provides a fascinating perspective on resilience, adaptability, and personal growth. Brian's journey exemplifies the very essence of living audaciously. His insights into navigating life's challenges, embracing change, and overcoming mental barriers will resonate deeply with anyone looking to enhance their own resilience and performance. So now that we've got the table set and we're ready to go, let's turn to our conversation with Brian. Enjoy. Hey, Brian, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it. These are fun. I really enjoy doing them.
Fun is great. Oh, absolutely. I'm with you on the fun thing. Just the idea, I mean, for me, the idea of being able to engage in conversation or dialogue that, other people have the opportunity to eavesdrop on, and they can hear something, take and help them benefit themselves in some way. I just think it's a great place to be. I think of a blessing from my perspective. And so I appreciate you for helping me be able to continue, I guess, my mission, if you will. Here on this podcast, we talk always and often about this best audacious life, and we encourage individuals to go after that. And I always I always very want to be very clear when we talk about this best audacious life, how we are all on our own individual path, Brian. And so the steps that I take to get to where I need to go to that point of audaciousness may be very different from you versus Sally, Tom, Ricky. I mean, we're all living this different life, but it's still important that we take that step nonetheless. And while you can look to other people's past and what they're doing, the comparison can be very, very dangerous if you're not mindful of that. And so that's kind of what we talk about here, we encourage here on this podcast. I think you've got a fantastic background because it's the mix of all sorts of things. I mean, you've got a PhD in organizational development, you're a stuntman at the same time, and we'll get into all that. But maybe as a starting point, if you can, we'll open up the floor here and give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves to our listeners and tell us about what's gotten to the point that you're at now.
Oh, wow. That's I mean, I've been on this planet for half a century. That's a lot right there. Well, I mean, I live in Nashville, Tennessee right now. I'd say that I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee, because that's where I graduated from high school and it's where my family stayed. So it's where I continued to go back to for holidays and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
But I lived before we moved to Nashville I believe I was in eighth grade. I lived in Atlanta, Georgia. I lived in Oklahoma. And then we landed in Nashville. And then after I left for college, I lived in New Jersey. I lived in Los Angeles, a little brief stint in Washington State, and then back down to Los Angeles, and then now over to Nashville for the last, I'd say, 11 years. So I'm back where I say I'm from. It's been a circuitous route with a lot of different things, but this is where I am. And currently, what I'm doing is keynote speaking and coaching. I'm developing some classes along with those coaching programs in motivation, pressure, and a four-phased approach to performance. I've written a book. I'm writing another book now. I believe right now it's going to be called Flow Under Fire: A
Yeah.
Stuntman's Guide to Pressure. We'll see where that goes, but that's the one I'm working on now. I'm a parent. I have an 11-year-old daughter who's fantastic. I have a fiance who has two boys who are 9 and 12, so they're all right in the same range. They all get along well, and it's an energetic house over here. And in addition to those other things, as you mentioned, I'm also a stuntman, and I have been for 30 years. So this actually marks the 30th year. My very
Wow.
first stunt show was in 1994 at the Batman stunt show at Six Flags in New Jersey. So
Okay.
30 years of that, I'm still going. I worked last week or the week before, I guess, on a TV show, new TV show here in Nashville. They're shooting
Mhm.
it called Scarpetta.
Okay.
It's a Nicole Kidman show, and I'm working next week and the week after that on a TV show in Albuquerque called The Cleaning Lady. So
Okay.
still going. When the opportunity comes up to do that, I always take it because it is so much fun, and I love the people. I just love the whole environment. So I will say yes to those as long as somebody wants to keep asking, and as long as my body will continue to be able to do what they're asking to do. So
I was gonna say it because obviously you're willing to keep jumping out of windows and getting set on fire, and who knows all the kinds of things you've had done to you. Hey, why not, right? Keep going.
yeah, like I said, it's a great time, and you never know what you're gonna get. Like I said last week, I was in a car driving down a freeway that was closed. There was a driving sequence. This next week, I'll be doing a fight on a sailboat that's on a trailer, getting knocked off, clipping a picnic table, and going to the ground. So you never know what you're gonna get. Before that, I was in a truck driving down the road, and came flying out the back of it. So you don't know what you're gonna get, and you're always around some new people, and it's just a fun thing that it's just really been a huge part of my development, and
Right.
and it's something that when I haven't had the ability to work in stunts as often or as frequently as I would like, I've really suffered. Personally, I've suffered because
Mm,
I love it, and to not be able to do what I loved around the people that I'm most comfortable in, the
right.
environment that I really thrive in, I suffered for that. And
Right.
so I'm really happy to have the opportunity to do that now.
There's much to be said about being around those things that you love and enjoy, and again, the people as well are a big part of that. Imagine it fuels you, it charges you, keeps you energized, excited about life and generally. And so, yeah, I think that's a really important lesson of staying close as possible to things that you love. Once you know what they are, the first word is figure what they are, then stay close to them, right?
Yeah, and that's an interesting point because my whole beginning when I graduated from high school, I went to college at Rutgers University in New Jersey because that was what I was supposed to do. I mean, that was what I'd been told my whole life. That's the path. That's
Right.
what you do. You graduate from high school, you go to college, you finish college, you get a job, you do the job for a while. Somewhere along the way, you meet somebody, you have a family, and I don't know, next thing you know, you're retired, and that was the path that was. I don't know that it was ever explicitly told to me. I wasn't sat down in a room somewhere and say, "Okay, Brian, here's your path for the rest of your
Right.
life." But it was very clear that was the expectation. And when I went to college, I spent the first 2 years trying to figure out, okay, well, what am I going to be when I grow up? I've got 4 years here, and now I've got 3 years here. Oh, nope, I got 2 years here. What am I going to do when I grow up? And I couldn't figure it out. I ran through different options in my mind. I really liked psychology. I was majoring in psychology. I'd taken a lot of psychology classes, but I couldn't really wrap my head around any jobs in psychology that I would enjoy.
Right.
And then came along stunts. I had a friend who was the company manager of that Batman stunt show at the Six Flags out there. He got me tickets to the show. I saw it, and that was it. That was where it was. That's where it was it was a poignant moment that I'll never forget where, I mean, this big explosion went off and motorcycles came jumping out of this thing. And I just, that was it. That was,
Yeah.
I want
Well,
to do that. And
yeah.
I was lucky enough again to have my friend be the company manager. So I was able to go backstage and ask the people, well, how do you get this job? How does this work? And because I couldn't even believe it was a job. I mean,
Right,
they were
right,
doing fun things and getting paid
right.
for it. And they said, well, you got to know how to do fights, high falls, and motorcycles. And at the time, I knew how to do exactly zero of those things. So I got with a couple of the people in the show, and they taught me how to do fights and high falls. And I bought a dirt bike and went out and just practiced. Went to the audition, got the job, did that next summer, the summer after my junior year, before my senior year, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. You know,
Right.
I was making more money than I'd ever made, having more fun than I'd ever made, learning more stuff than I'd ever learned. And I felt like I was on a path to something. I felt like I now had direction. I now had something I wanted to achieve. Whereas I was just sort of treading water in college. I didn't know what I was doing. And at that moment, well, then, and that made college even harder because whereas I was treading water before, I was sinking rapidly in
Mm,
my senior year because I didn't care. I'd spent that time at college trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I'd finally found it, and it had nothing to do with college. So I didn't go to class. I somehow or another I managed to pass the first semester, but I was failing everything the second semester. Just dropped out. I dropped out of college with one semester to go and moved to Los Angeles. Well, I did the show in New Jersey again that summer, and then I moved to Los Angeles to pursue stunts. And luckily they had the same show at the Six Flags out there, so I was able to move out and have that job
right.
while I was trying to get into the film and TV world, which is not an easy world to get into, but there were a couple of connections that I just sort of happened to cross in my life that helped that. One was one of the days I was skipping school at Rutgers, I was playing golf and I was by myself and I went to the Rutgers golf course and there was just one of me and there was three of these other guys in front of me. And if
Right.
you know anything about golf, they typically send people out in groups of four. So I
Mhm.
asked these guys ahead of me, I said, do you guys mind if I play with you? And they said, no, that's fine. So I started playing with them. Turns out one of them was a stuntman who lived in Los Angeles and was just back visiting his grandfather, which is one of the other guys who was playing. It was his grandfather and his grandfather's friend. So
Right.
I spent 18 holes of golf talking to the guy and
Yeah.
we got to know each other. And at the time I had planned to move to Florida to do a live show down at the Disney place
Yeah.
and or at least audition for it. And he said, look, if you want to be a stuntman, don't do that. Move to Los Angeles. That's where all the stuff is. I said, okay.
Okay.
So he gave me his number. I moved to Los Angeles. I contacted him when I was out there. And what he did that was really, I mean, it was probably the most helpful thing of my career. And he did it immediately. I moved in January. In February, I was playing on a softball team in the Stuntman Softball League. So I
Okay.
was surrounded every
Yeah.
week by
Yeah.
stunt people and I
Yeah.
met all the people and I was able to get introduced around and I was now in the community
Right.
and even in the community it takes a while to get the trust of people to where they'll bring you in and hire you on shows, but it's at least the start.
That's right.
So that was so it's interesting that you say, that whole fine, you got to know what it is that you want. I spent a long time in college
Yep.
with no clue what it is that I wanted, no direction, just flapping. And
Right.
then once I saw that show and once I saw that that was an actual realistic viable possibility, which at least it was in my 20-year-old mind,
Yes. Yes.
other people that I spoke to, it was not a viable option in their mind. My parents, my uncles, I mean, everybody I talked to, dude, you can't just move to Los Angeles and be a stuntman.
And put your life on the line, right?
But you know what? You can, and I did, and
Yeah.
I'm thrilled that that's what happened.
So what I love about your story, and going right back to not knowing sort of where you want to go, where you want to be up, and I think what's really important, and I think this would be a message to our young people, is that it's okay not to know. There's so much pressure okay, here, what are you going to do? What are at the age of 12, tell me what you're going to do when you grow up. And if you don't know, well, figure it out. And no one says you have to have the answer at that point when you're 12 or 22 or 32 or 42. You don't
Yeah.
have to have those answers. But what I think is important to know, and when you sort of discover that, is what things do you enjoy? What charges you? What gets you excited? Because through that natural process of being around those things that you love and enjoy and appreciate, it'll present itself in a way that you never thought was possible, and things, jobs that you didn't know exist will all of a sudden appear, and you're like, that's perfect for me, right? And so I think that piece of not knowing, if we can take some of that pressure away we put on young people for them not to know and just focus on what do you enjoy, figure out you first, and then everything else will kind of naturally fall into place, I think.
Yeah, well, a couple things in there. I think what's funny is you say you don't have to know. I'll go further than that and just say you can't know. Whatever you think you know about what's getting ready to happen 5 years from now, at least in my experience, you're wrong.
Right.
And or certainly there's very much incomplete data. You do not have a comprehensive understanding of what's getting ready to come 5 years from now. You just don't. And that's in terms of the environment, that's in terms of the people that you're around, that's in terms of even your likes, desires, situations, things like that change too. I mean, for example, like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I found the stunts, and so I started pursuing stunts. Well, 4 or 5 years after that, I missed learning. And I decided I wanted to go back and get my bachelor's degree. I wanted to engage in some of that academic work that that I'd hated for so long. I
Mhm.
missed it now. So that's what I did. This was back before the days of the internet and being able to just go to college online. I had to
Yep.
physically go back across the country from LA to New Jersey and live for 3 or 4 months in order to complete the degree. But that's what I did. And I'm glad that I did. I mean, it was a much more enjoyable experience the second time around because I don't want to say that I was pressured the first time, but it was kind of that way. I didn't know where else to go or what else to
Sure,
do, and I
sure.
was at college because that's just what I felt like I had to do. This time I was choosing to be there, and the end state, and that made everything better. So I was able to engage, and I was ready to learn. I was ready to soak in the information, and that changed too. So, and then once I finished the bachelor's, I continued on with a master's degree in sports psychology and a PhD in organizational psychology for the exact same reasons. I just enjoyed learning. I enjoyed the material. I never took any classes in either of those programs, well, any of the three, the bachelor's, the master's, or the PhD, because I thought I'd be working in those fields.
Right.
At no point did I ever think that I'd have a job. I was a stuntman. That's what I was doing. This was more of an avocation. It was a hobby for me, this studying of material.
Yes.
Well, then life does what it does, the way we're talking about. And I ended up getting married, and that came with a stepdaughter. And because of the volatility and the uncertainty of stunts, which was fine when I was single, it wasn't fine anymore when I had the family. I started to get worried about that. And when am I going to make money? How much am I going to make? Am I going to have to be out of town for how long? You just never know. And so I started looking around for jobs. I put my resume out on the different sites, asking asking essentially, okay, so who's willing to hire somebody who has no experience doing anything but falling down, but does have a master's degree in sports psychology? And it turns out the U.S. Army, contracting organizations, they'll hire you if that's your resume and what you do. So that's what I started doing was sports psychology, performance psychology pertaining to the military. So focusing on their specific performances, helping them shoot better, clear buildings better, get more consistent and efficient with physical fitness. The combat engineers finding IEDs, etc.
Mm.
So so that's what the focus was for those 2 years that I was there is really, okay, how do we help soldiers get their minds into a place where they're capable of consistent, efficient, effective performance over time? That was really the mission. And then I got a divorce. I moved back to LA to start doing stunts again full time. And I didn't stop doing stunts, by the
Right.
way, during those 2 years. I would, if
Yeah.
people would call, I would go work. In fact, I worked on the first Twilight movie when I was up there on there because they shot that in the Portland area.
Yep.
Worked on a couple other movies in Portland, Spokane. Would come down to LA to work on some stuff too. So every now and then I would get calls and I'd be able to work. But my
Right.
full time, my main focus was with the Army until the divorce. And then I went back to LA, did stunts again full time for another 4 or 5 years, which again, I didn't predict. I was
Right,
married. I had
right,
this family.
right,
I was
right.
working in this full-time job.
Yep,
You know, I
yep,
was
yep.
shifting my whole identity really around to this different being. Well, now all that got shot, and so now I'm back to square one to kind of reset, recock, and figure out what's next. And then, you know, so then, like I said, about 4 or 5 years of that, and then rinse and repeat. Met another woman, got married. That came with another stepdaughter and my daughter. That's when she was born. This was, you know, 11 years or so ago. Well, 12
Yeah,
years when we met her. And same concerns. Okay, well, now I have a family. How am I going to
yeah,
support them? Can stunts do it? And that's when I ended up back with the Army again, this time at Fort Campbell, just outside of Nashville. So that's what brought me back home.
got you.
And so again, now I've got this family. I'm living in a house. I have a mortgage. I've got this full-time job, and that's what life is until about 3 or 4 years after that, got divorced again. So now I'm back, but I didn't leave that time because now I had my daughter and we had joint custody. So I had to figure out
Sure,
Nashville,
sure.
which is not a great place to be a stunt person.
Mm,
But so I stayed with this job with the Army for a while. And it was a good job. And honestly, at that point in my life, it was probably the best job I could have because one of the things that I did, like I said, the first time I was with the Army,
yeah,
they focused on specific performances. How do we help people get their minds right to perform better? This other time, they added a different component to the program, and that was resilience.
yeah,
So the focus was on teaching the soldiers some techniques, some tools, some concepts that they could use regardless of what part of their lives they were in. It wasn't just performance based, it was life based. So when bad stuff happens, which is it's
yes,
inevitable. You can't stop it.
yeah,
How do you handle it?
yeah,
How do you not get knocked down quite as far? How do you come back to where you were more quickly? And the most important, at least to me, and this is what really drew me to this program and made me jump in with both feet, was not only how do you not get knocked down as far or how do you recover faster, but how do you get better as a
mm,
result of having gone through what you did? How do you grow and thrive through the experience? Not even through the experience, but because of the experience.
okay,
That really resonated with me because I spent quite a few really tough years in that job. So I was during the day standing up in front of soldiers and teaching them these concepts. And throughout the day and into the night, I was doing my level best to apply them to myself.
absolutely.
And honestly, this is where my book came from. The book is called Begin Again, Utilize the Wisdom of Eastern and Western Ideologies to Achieve Your Full Potential. And what it is a series of 183 essays on whatever. I mean, just it was just different topics. Like here's a problem that many of us tend to face. Here are some some information about it that might be helpful for you. And if you do these things, take these steps, you'll probably see some benefit. Well, each of those essays began as a sticky note, and the sticky note was created while I was doing my morning reading. In the morning, every morning, I would get up, I would sit down, I had a stack of maybe 5 or 6 books.
Mhm.
Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, collections from Seneca, the Bhagavad Gita, just different works of wisdom,
Yep, yep,
and I would read a little bit from each. And as something struck me, as it connected with something going on in my life or something that I was feeling, I would write that connection down on the sticky note. And then that turned into an essay, and 183 of them later, there's a book. So that book really it emerged organically from the work that I was doing on myself in that very, very challenging time that I was facing. And so yeah, all that all that to say that yes, if you're young, you don't not only do you not need to know what
that's
it
right.
is you're going to do, but you can't know. All you can do is be in the moment. Yeah, I mean, become self-aware. What kinds of things do you like? What kinds of things
Yes,
don't you
yes,
like? Where are some of your natural talents? What are some skills that you can learn? Those aren't the same things. We have some natural talents, but we can also develop skills through
that's
work
right.
and effort. So what are those things that you gravitate toward and just start asking questions and hanging out with the people who also do those things? Because even with stunts, I grew up watching The Fall Guy as a TV
Sure.
show, not the movie that just came
Yep,
out, but as a TV show.
yep. Me
And so
neither.
I knew that there was such a thing as stunt people. I knew that it was a job. I mean, it was in my brain somewhere,
Yep,
but at no point in my childhood did I ever connect, oh, this is a job with I can do it. It wasn't until I saw that stunt show
yep,
that the connection got made where
Yes.
it was just, oh, wait a minute. This actually is a job and this
Yes.
is
It's real.
something people can do.
Right.
So just being around the people who are in the arenas that you enjoy will, like you said, and you said it very, very, very well. It will open the door. It will open your eyes to things you didn't even know
Yeah.
existed.
That's right.
And that's where, decisions about now can be made. Let
That's
five
right.
years come when 5 years is over,
That's right. That's
but for
right.
now, just figure it out for now. What's working now? Where are you at now?
Brian, through your story, again, I think that's a beautiful article. First of all, thank you for sharing it as deep as you did. But I think it's just a beautiful articulation of just really what we're talking about here. Like, as you said, you can't know. There's things that happen to you that you had no way of knowing, and so to try and plan for the unknown it is impossible. I do. It's funny. There's an expression that I've heard, and I think it's so true that when we're living life moving forward, it's an art. When we stop and look back, it's a science. And through that science, you can see where all the dots connected. You can see where if I didn't do this, then I couldn't get here and I couldn't get there. And so there's a connection between all of them. But when you're living in that moment, you don't, it's impossible to see them. All you have is the information you have in this present moment. And that's what you use to make the best possible decision with what you know, what you have, what's around you, and everything else just sort of falls into place. I definitely, as you're sharing, your journey, I certainly hear that. The other piece that I absolutely love that you talked about resilience and not just bouncing back, but how do you bounce back better, right? I think that's that additional caveat, that little nuance, if you will. I think that really is significant because it allows people not only just to focus on right now, what's happening and how you get through right now, but how you can also plan for the future. So going ahead a little bit, going forward a little bit, but I think that's necessary from the standpoint of being able to bounce back in the best possible way. There's an analogy I oftentimes use about life being a series of hills and valleys, right? So on the top of the hill, things are great. It's a happy place. There's joy, there's excitement, there's fulfillment, there's satisfaction, all the things that you appreciate about life. But as life goes at that hill, you kind of go down and you get down in the valley, and that's where the yucky, icky, not so fun stuff happens. And so, the goal is, first of all, the recognition is that there is going to be a valley. There is going to be a dip at some point. You can't stay at top all the time. There's going to be a dip. And how quickly do you get out of that valley to get back to the top of the hill? I think that sort of analogy helps people frame, okay, what's happening to me now, as bad as it is, that's a part of life. So I'm in a valley now. I'm in a dip. What needs to happen for me to get back to the top of the hill where I can celebrate and be happy again? And I sort of I reflect. So that resonates in my mind as you were speaking about it. But the piece around getting better is the one I absolutely love. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, well, and to take that analogy just a little bit further, so as opposed to there's a hill that I'm on, and then I'm gonna head down because some sort of and it might just be a cliff. You might just fall right off and land right at the bottom.
Fair enough.
I mean,
Absolutely.
what the landscape is, there are gonna be ups and downs is the main point.
Yeah.
But to take that analogy a little bit further, is that wherever I'm starting from, if I do hit one of those valleys or one of those cliffs, whatever it is, when I come out of it, I end up higher than I was at the beginning. So if you look at the overall trajectory, let's say, I don't know, when I was 5 years old, I was starting at 1,000 feet. By the time I'm 20, I'm at 10,000 feet, and that's just where I'm going up and down from. I'll never go down to 1,000 feet again. I'm continually moving up,
Yep.
and that's what resilience allows us to do. And it's interesting too, as you were talking about, predicting and decisions and all of that. One thing is, and this is where I forget the name of the fallacy, but there is one in decision making that that we judge how good our decisions are based on the outcome of what happened. So if we decide something and the outcome was good, then we perceive that the decision was a good one.
Right.
But that's a fallacy. That's not necessarily the case, because when we're making the decision, we have access to only the information that we
That's right.
do.
That's
And
right.
in that moment, we can only use that information in the ways that we can. And given that information and given how we're processing it and what we're capable of, we're going to make whatever choice we do. Now, that may be the best choice in the world, but because of things outside our control, the outcome itself of that decision may be horrible. Or it may be a ridiculous decision. I mean, truly the wrong one. If we're
Right.
talking in terms of probability, there was a 0.5% possibility that anything good would happen. But in the world of probability, a 0.5% still is a 0.5%, and it does happen sometimes, and you just happened into it. So it was a horrible decision, but the outcome worked out. So we can't judge the quality of our decision based on the outcome. We can't. We have to judge it based on the process we used to arrive at the decision, meaning how did we gather the information? What type of information did we consider? How did we consider it? That's how we can decide whether a decision that we've made is useful or not. And the other thing that came to mind too is just I would, again, you talk about the young people. If I could speak to the, I don't know, 15-year-old self that I used to be, I have repeatedly said I will never. And I don't know how many times I've been wrong, but it's a lot. So let's say when I dropped out of college, I will never go back to school again. I'm never darkening the door of another university ever. Well, I got my bachelor's, I got my master's, and I have a PhD, and I teach at a college now. I'm a faculty member at Grand Canyon University. So there's that one. As soon as I became a stuntman, I'm never getting a real job, never having a full-time job. This is it. Well, I've worked 11 years at a full-time job for the Army. Never getting married. I'm never gonna have any of that. I'm just gonna. No, I've been married 2 times. I'm going on 3 right now with kids to get. So it's one of those things that
Never say never, really.
I have learned over the years. Like, it's just not a. But I was, and in those moments, this is the thing. This is what we're saying. In that moment, I was convinced that I was right, given my circumstances, given my experience, given my priorities, given what I wanted to achieve and the direction that I was headed. I was certain, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that what I was saying was correct.
Yes.
And yet here I am completely wrong. So we can't get locked into those directions. We can't get locked in and fixated on these things that we think about now. Now, it's great to have goals. That's not a bad thing. But we have to also be open to the possibility of flexing, moving, changing when circumstances dictate, and not think of it as being wishy-washy or lacking grit or perseverance. There are times when quitting is the right thing to do. There's a book, it's actually called Quit, and I'm blanking on the name of the author. It's a female. She was a professional poker player for a long time. And yeah, that's kind of what the book is. Like, look, yeah, have goals, persevere, pursue them, have a plan, but at some point, the circumstances change, life shifts, other information comes into, you start to know other things, you meet new people, and now those things that were priorities aren't anymore, and that's okay. Shift, move into a different direction. I mean, and that's something I do today. Literally, just this year I did it. Because when I quit the job at the Army, that was about 2.5 years ago that I quit that job at the Army to open my own business. At the time, it was called Begin Again Performance Psychology. Now it's Brian Hite Global. But when I did that, and to go back to stunts again full time for the 3rd time for those keeping count. But that was it. Life changed. It changed for me. I had different priorities. I had different things I wanted to achieve. I had craved the stability that the full-time job gave me, and I'm thankful for it during the time that I had it, particularly during those challenging years that I was describing earlier. But my circumstances changed. I improved. I got better. I developed new goals, new priorities, and they didn't involve that full-time job anymore. So I had to shift, and I quit, and I opened my own business and went back to stunts. And even with that business, my intent when I first opened it was to work primarily, if not exclusively, with athletes and performers, meaning singers, dancers, musicians, stunt people, which I did. I worked with that population. But now, having been in this world for a little longer and experiencing more, now I've found that I really enjoy speaking. I really enjoy talking to audiences. And so the keynote speaking piece is one that I'm really striving towards. So if anything that I'm saying resonates with anybody out there, and somebody who wants somebody to speak, I'm available, and I really enjoy doing it. Another is the writing. Again, this is one of those things. Like, if somebody had told me 5-10 years ago that I would enjoy writing, I'd have told them they were crazy. But here we are, and I have a book, and I got another one coming out, and that's something that I really enjoy. I want to pursue that, and so that was another change. And it's, but if you think about it in terms of, well, he committed to this, and he said he was going to do that, and now he's not. He's quitting. He's shifting. He's moving over here. He's wishy. I mean, there's a way to think of it that way, but I don't. I think of it as, again, I've just lived longer. I know more. I understand better what I want, and and the directions that I want to go have changed as a result. And I think that's fine. Not only fine, I
Change is a
think that
great
that's
thing.
what we need to do
Yeah,
as
thank you.
humans to continue to progress.
No, I think change is a great thing, and nothing that we do is that we guarantee to be as your life is testament, mine as well. That nothing that you ever do is set to this is what it is. This is what it always ever will be forever and ever, and amen. It doesn't work that way. It's our approach to that change that happens, and maybe for those that that struggle with change, need to sort of look at, okay, what kind of, and I know you spend time helping people understand the mental barriers. Like, so what is it that's in your mind blocking you from accepting this change? You're not wanting to change. Yes, we know there might be an emotional attachment to something, but if that situation has changed, you've got to change. You've got to change with it. And if you can't, then you need to figure out, well, why that is and what some of the barriers are. So maybe that might slide into Brian, into maybe we could talk about these barriers that prevent people from being resistant to change.
Yeah, well, one that comes to mind when you were speaking is what's called the sunk cost fallacy. So
Okay.
this is where I've put in X amount of time, effort, energy, money into something, and I'm not finished with it yet. I haven't achieved what I've set out to achieve in that area, but I'm losing interest. I don't think I want to do it anymore. I realized that it's not really for me, but I've put in so much already that it feels like if I were to leave it, I would have wasted all of that time, effort, energy, or money. And that's called the sunk cost fallacy. And it's a fallacy because I mean the easiest example is probably to just use a movie. We've all been watching movies and we're sitting in the middle of the movie and we're thinking, "Oh my God, this is horrible." But we're an hour in and
Right.
we got another half hour, maybe hour to go, but we've already spent an hour. So we rationalize to ourselves, well, maybe it'll get better as it progresses. But you know what? If a movie's bad after an hour, it's probably bad. You're not going to like it.
Right.
But we rationalize that. We stick with it. We push through. And then and we say to ourselves, well, I don't, because otherwise this whole hour has been wasted, this hour of my
Right.
life.
Right. Right.
Well, you know what? The hour's gone. You're not going to get it back. So you can jump ship right there. And yes, that was a bad hour of your life, but now you got another hour that you can do whatever you want with. Or you could stick with it and you could waste 2 hours of your life instead of just the one. But that's how we think about it. We don't want to jump ship. So that sunk cost fallacy is one of those things that really can hold people back. Another is just a value system around quitting, around
Mm.
uh, perseverance, around grit, around changing our minds, even. I mean, I wish more people, especially in politics, for crying out loud, if you get new information that challenges what you thought before, integrate that information and change your mind accordingly. And if you get more information tomorrow that changes that conclusion, well, then change your mind again. Change it every time you get more information. That's because, I mean, we don't want to be wrong for any longer than we need to be wrong. So there's no reason for me to say, okay, A is how it is. And then tomorrow I get some information that clearly shows that A is not how it is. But I said, nope, I already said yesterday that A was how it is. So I'm going to look stupid if I say that B is how it is now. But I have to say that B is now how it is because I've got this new information. So I have to change. But some people, because of the values within our culture, particularly the Western independent, we have to be strong, we have to be independent, we have to know what we have and stick strong to our beliefs and we can't change. That causes a lot of guilt in people when they come across situations like what I've described before, where I'm living in a way that worked for me 5 years ago. It made sense for me to be in this position 5 years ago. But
Yep.
over those 5 years, my circumstances have changed. Things are different than they were. And now it just doesn't seem like this is the place where I need to be. But I can't quit. I can't change. I can't move on. Otherwise, I will feel guilty for having, I will either feel guilty for having changed and let this other thing go before finishing it, or I will worry about how I look in other people's eyes, how I will be judged
Yes.
by others for making that decision to change. And
Yes.
I think really, I mean, the sunk cost fallacy and that guilt or shame or comparison with others, that really does hold a lot of people back from making those changes when they feel in their gut. And really, I mean, even analytically and logically know that they should make some changes.
Yeah, yeah, those certainly are two big ones. I think as you're talking, I think they're so relatable, and I think we've all have been there at some point in time. Even that bad movie, although I'm sure the stunts were good in the bad movie, right? But it was still a bad movie nonetheless. We still stuck it out. So on stunts, I wanted to. I would imagine it's such a fascinating world to be in, and clearly hearing you talk about it, it's something that you love and appreciate and enjoy. Um, I'd love to know what sort of lessons. I would imagine some really cool lessons have come out of the stunt world that can be applied to life. Any couple, maybe one or two that sort of pop up for you?
Mm. Um, Life lessons from stunts. It's funny that you put it like that. There's another book that I've written um, a little bit of, and I've got some chapters for it. It's called Life Lessons from the Seat of a Dirt Bike.
Okay.
And the different topics within there come from when I take my dirt bike out and I'm riding, and just different things come to mind. So, for example, when you have opportunity to catch air, take it because it doesn't come along that often. You know, it's not always there, but catching air is fun and flying through the air is great. So when you get the opportunity, don't pass it up. Make sure you take it. Uh, Another one is to hold on loosely because if you're going through bumps, a really bumpy part of the trail, and you try to hang on tightly to the motorcycle, you're getting bounced all over the place too. But if you hang on a little bit more loosely, don't, not let go. I mean, tight enough to hang on to the handlebars and be able to deal with it, but just kind of let the motorcycle do its thing. Let the motorcycle take its own path with just a little bit of guidance from us. Things tend to work out a whole lot better. And I think that in how that translates to life is that sometimes when challenges arise, we tend to try to grab too tightly and to control too much. And there's only so much we can control. And from day to day, we have to learn to let stuff go. Not completely, but to let it go. Another is if you see a rut, get into it because that's a safe path. That's
Right.
the unknown is in the outside. So if you get a rut, you can follow somebody else's trail, then you know you're probably gonna be okay. But right after that's a chapter on if you see a rut, stay out of it
Yeah.
because sometimes when you're on a trail, the ruts are created by other riders and you know it's safe, but other times it's created by water coming down the hill and you don't know what's going to be in that rut. And once you're in it, you can't get out of it very easily at all. You're stuck. And so you want to avoid those ruts and make your own path. So there are some things like that I've come across just with the dirt bike. With stunts, I don't know. I would say that one of that a few ways that I've improved through the stunt world
Yeah.
I'm an introvert for sure. And in the stunt world, you spend a lot of time just hanging out with people. So I've become more comfortable talking to people, hanging out with people, being in those environments. Another is handling the I don't want to call them emergency situations, but situations that can be emergency situations that are very important. For example, about a year ago, my my fiance and I woke up at 4:30 in the morning or something to get ready to go get in an Uber to go to the airport to go on a trip. Well, when I got up, our basement was flooded. There was, I don't know, 6 inches of water sitting in the basement, and we're all set to go on this trip for a week. And so there was a lot of stuff that had to be dealt with very, very quickly in order to minimize the flood damage and to handle the trip and all the things that went along with it. And I think that my experience with stunts allows me to be in those situations, to encounter those unexpected moments where immediate action and behavior it's necessary, and do that with a clear head and without getting too panicky or over the top or anything else. So I think that's another big benefit that I've gotten from there. And another is just flexibility, because I'll tell you, you can spend a month rehearsing one action sequence, and when
Yeah.
you get on set and the director sees it, the actor sees it, like, no, we're not doing that. So I mean, I'll give you an example. This wasn't a rehearsal, but I was working on 24, the Kiefer Sutherland TV
Yeah.
show,
Yeah.
and I was on my way to work, and I was supposed to be doing a fight scene or getting shot. I don't remember what it was. I think it was a fight scene. And the stunt coordinator calls me and he says, "All right, so things changed. The schedule switched around. We shot some stuff we didn't think we were gonna. So you're not gonna do a fight today, but you're still working. You're just gonna be basically a glorified background, glorified extra on set. So you're not really gonna do any stunts, but you're still obviously getting paid as a stuntman." I said, "All right, great, fine, no problem. Great day." So I show up expecting that because that's what I was told. And when they call for the rehearsal, which Kiefer, he liked to do private rehearsals for all of the things to start with. He didn't want any of the crew all around. He's a very volatile guy too. So he wanted his piece. So they called for the rehearsal, and we're in there, just the performers in the scene and the director and the director of photography. And they walk through they have the sides, which is a little piece of the script that they're shooting that day. And they're reading through and they're like, okay, so we got here, and then you say this, and then he moves over there, and then you go over there and you say that. And then Kiefer's like, all right, so when does this guy go over there? And the director's looking at the side like, well, he doesn't go over there. And when he doesn't say this, he's like, no, that's not in here at all. Kiefer looks directly at me and says, all right, you're going to go over here. When he says this, you walk over here, and here's what you say. And he gave me a line. It's not in the script. Nobody wrote it. It came straight out of his head right then, and he's telling it to me. So, and again, this is the star of the show. He's a producer of the show, and I didn't expect any of this, and here it is. He's hitting me with it, and you don't ask Kiefer to repeat himself, and you don't demonstrate a lack of proficiency around that guy at all, because you're going to get yelled at and maybe fired. So I'm listening as intently as I know how, like to this line. I've blocked everything else out in my world, trying to just soak in the words that he said and repeat them in my mind over and over again. Because once he got done saying them, I'm going over them in my mind as the director. He's keeping on talking about who's doing what. I'm paying no attention to that. I'm just going over the lines so that I know what the words are. Because I'll tell you, Kiefer's one of the smartest people I've ever worked with. Now, he's got his problems and his issues, just like we all do, but he is one of the most intelligent people I've ever worked with. And even though he just made up that line out of nothing, out of thin air right then, and just said it to me once, he remembered what it was. And if I didn't say it that way, he would know it. So anyway, so I did that. So like I said, I was supposed to go in and do a fight scene. Then I was supposed to go in and do nothing. And now all of a sudden I got a line, and I'm coming over here and I'm getting shot. And all of that has taught me to just be able to go into again, holding on loosely. Hang on loosely. I think I know what's happening, but as things shift and move, I just got to shift and move with them and allow the directions to go in what they will. Because otherwise, if I try to grab on and hold on too tightly and control too much, I'll get shaken off. I'll wreck.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that flexibility and being to adapt and to respond to things as they happen, it's such a beautiful way of living, because the path you again, we talked earlier, it's not everything is scripted to the line. There'll be, you'll have to pivot, change, switch, move entirely different direction, and all that's good stuff. And I think that's important. I really appreciate you for sharing that, Brian. This has been a great chat. I mean, I appreciate you taking the time to be here. Like I said off the top, I think you some fascinating insights and great reminders of different ways that we can live our lives. You got a book out. You got one book out, one on the way, and another one on the way after that. It sounds like, which is fantastic.
Got 3, 4, 5 of them on the way after that. I have so many ideas. I'm trying to prioritize and just get do the first thing first, kind of a thing. But yeah, I do have that, and I do have a few programs that I'm focusing on too. I mentioned them earlier. Motivation, pressure is really the one that I'm getting on, because this is something that's interesting, because you talk about perspective, and this is one that came up for me because I kept hearing pressure situations. You got to perform well in pressure situations. You got to learn how to perform under pressure. And I started thinking about that and just my experience in stunts and everything else. And I thought, you know what? Well, first of all, I don't think there's such a thing as a pressure situation, because whether we experience pressure or not depends on us. It depends on how we perceive and experience that situation. It's not the situation itself. Pressure doesn't exist in the moment. Pressure exists in the mind. And so that was the first thing. And then I got to perform well under pressure. Well, no, you don't. What you need to do is get rid of pressure, because if you're experiencing pressure, you are not in the condition to perform your best. So that's really where that program emerged from. And I've had a good time talking about it. I've had a good time developing it. So those are the pressure, the motivation, and the 4-phased approach to performance, which is an approach to literally any performance that we developed while I was at the military. We applied it to the soldiers that we worked with. I've applied it to athletes and performers outside, even real estate agents, for crying out loud. I mean, truly any performance, literally any performance can be broken down in these 4 phases, and people see benefit from it. So those are the main programs. They're coaching programs right now. I'm looking to expand that to also having online classes. That probably won't be until the middle to the end of 2025, but that's where I'm going with that. But if you want to learn more, if anything I said, just go to brianhiteglobal.com, BrianHite global.com, and you'll find information on the programs. And truly, if you've ever struggled with pressure and performing in those situations, or motivation, or felt overwhelmed in performance situations, and you don't have a mentor to walk you through those things step by step, then I encourage you to visit the website, check out the program, see if it's something that makes sense to you. And if it does, reach out and let's have a conversation about it. It's free. You can have a discovery call. I'm happy to talk to you. And if you mention that you heard me on this podcast, I'm happy to give you 35% off of whichever program it is that you choose. Just let me know that you heard it here, and that discount's yours. So,
amazing.
But thank you so much for inviting me on. It's been a very fun conversation, and I really appreciate your willingness to allow this, I don't know, strange jobbed person to come talk to you for a little bit.
This is awesome. No, this has been a great time. I appreciate the insights, Brian. Thank you for doing this, and all the best, my friend.
Take care.
Back, we are here on the podcast. In our conversation, Brian shed light on the profound connection between pressure and performance. He emphasized that pressure exists in our minds rather than in the situation itself. This perspective is transformative by recognizing that we have the power to control our response to pressure. We can unlock our true potential. I particularly loved how Brian articulated the importance of flexibility, both in stunts and in life. It's a reminder that when we hold on tightly to our plans, we may miss out on the wonderful opportunities that arise from being adaptable. I encourage you to connect with Brian directly to learn more about his work and insights. You can find his contact details in the show notes below, along with the links to his website, Brian Hite Global. And again, you can go over there and explore his coaching programs and resources. In fact, Brian is offering listeners a 35% discount on any of his coaching programs for those who mention this podcast during the discovery call. This is a fantastic opportunity to gain insights and strategies tailored to your unique journey. I want to thank you for joining me on this journey on another edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, I invite you to like, follow, subscribe, share this episode. If you haven't already done so, your support helps this podcast grow and reach even more listeners who are seeking to live their best audacious lives. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stephenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.